Should feed through to my Instagram any second now. Brilliant. And we are live on Instagram as well. Beautiful. So what tends to happen is it normally kicks out the Instagram. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to be on, well, we'll be on both, but I won't be able to see both.
Okay.
All right, cool. All right, brilliant. So how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Just shoveled some food into my mouth for dinner. I can't complain. The weather's been gorgeous. Is this a second summer?
Uh, how long have you been living in the UK now?
11 years. You would think I would know by now.
Come on now, behave. Yeah, you know. And everybody know that we're going live now as well. So people will be jumping in because a lot of people have asked me so many questions about today's
Mm.
session. So it's gonna be really good. So if you give me a couple of seconds, let everybody kind of jump in. They'll be on the Instagram. Some people, if you're on Instagram, I can't see you, so make sure you come over to the live on the YouTube so that we can see your questions and all of these things.
Yes.
So you've been here for 11 years and you still harbor hope
Hope.
for good weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
I
man,
know.
I wish I had your faith.
Well, we take what we get, right?
Absolutely.
So when the sun is out, we're happy, and if it's not, then we just go, "Ugh, this country, this weather."
At least you have the good fortune of being able to do that. So,
Mm,
first and foremost, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out to actually speak to us today. Um,
mm,
it's something that is close to both of our hearts, and a lot of people from the questions that have been asked as well. But most importantly, it's important. It's an important conversation to have.
mhm.
Here at Roman Base, what we try to do is, yes, as we do have the enjoyment and the fun and the party, but we also
Yes.
like to talk about the real life stuff as well, which
Mhm,
is, trying to make your money work for you, and how do we save? How do we make the most of what's going on currently in the current climate?
mhm.
So so thankful that we managed to make the diaries work and kind of find some time today to have a conversation. I want to kind of kick it off first by asking you some questions about you,
Ooh,
and then
fun.
we'll get into yeah, exactly, it's fun. Then we'll get into it. So
Let's do it.
first and foremost, tell me a little bit about yourself and your history and how what your journey was like actually getting to this point of setting up almost your own bank.
Yes, so we're definitely not a bank, but
Mhm.
where do I begin? Well, I've been teased already for my optimism, even though I've been in this country for near 11 years. I'm actually an American. I'm born and bred in the Silicon Valley. So in California, where all the tech companies are, my parents were both immigrants from various places. My father is Indian, my mother is from Taiwan, and they immigrated as many immigrants do for a better life, for more opportunities, and ended up in the Silicon Valley, in the thick of it, where all these tech companies have been growing and building so many of the services and the apps and everything that we use today and that are commonplace. So I literally live down the road, or my parents live down the road from Apple. Isn't
Okay.
that isn't that mad? So that is my background. Grew up there in an immigrant household, and I think that probably will resonate with some people. Um, I remember, we were comfortable, and I was very, very privileged to live comfortably, but we always had this mentality of scrimping and saving, of, reuse that plastic bag. I don't know if you ever had that Danish cookie tin, that round
Oh
blue
yeah,
cookie
yeah, 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 yeah.
and inside of it, you weren't sure if there were actually cookies in it or if it was a
Mhm,
sewing kit,
mhm.
little things like that. We also sent money home, and so that was my upbringing. I then moved to the UK to work in the Obama administration. So as an
Oh,
American,
okay.
came over working for the US government, worked at the US Embassy back when it was in Mayfair before it moved to Battersea where it is now. And it was so inspirational. I actually got to meet Michelle Obama once.
All right.
Wow. What a woman. I have so much admiration for her. And I loved my experience there, but I really wanted to try and to move at a faster pace in my career. And so that is to say, I did a master's degree, and during that time, did a bunch of really interesting stuff after I graduated, including working at the likes of MasterCard. So if you've ever used a MasterCard debit card, then my work there probably has touched you in some way. I then got to work for Ann Bowden, who was the founder and CEO of Starling Bank. So if anyone banks with Starling, I was there when we launched the bank account at Starling Bank. And then was also at Klarna most recently. So this is to say that my background is very much in financial services and in this kind of niche space, what that we call fintech, which is both financial services and technology. And it was all of this past experience of building various cool products or apps or features that led me ultimately to found Bloom Money.
Fantastic. So we talk about, well, you just mentioned fintech, and it being a mixture of a technological or tech company, and
Yeah.
obviously finance as well.
Yeah.
When did you discover that there was this niche? Because you mentioned Starling, you mentioned Klarna, you mentioned all of these banks that exist, right? And
Mhm.
as well as the mainstream, run-of-the-mill banks, your big banks as well.
Yeah.
And we're talking banks, obviously, with financial services. When did
Mm.
you kind of recognize that there was a niche area, certainly to target, I don't want to say target women, but to empower women with saving as well, because that's one of the things that you talk about, and
Yeah.
also immigrants. Why and
Mm.
why
It's
did that?
so funny that you say that, isn't it? Because like it's we say niche, right? And I'm using air quotes for those that are listening but not watching, because actually women are 50% of the population, right? So it's not really a niche.
No.
And when it comes to immigrant communities, I mean, I live in London where 50% of the population is not from the UK, right? And so to me, neither of these things are niche, but to the financial system that we know, right, with the big banks and everything, these groups are considered niche. And I think both of my experience growing up in an immigrant household is what made me know inherently that our communities are not being served properly, right? And
Hmm.
and we've talked about this before, you and I, about the fact that why is it that we have, 10 ways to send money home? You can use JN Money, you can use Wise, you can use MoneyGram, Western Union, whatever.
Hmm.
But then when it comes to a product that's actually built for you to build wealth for yourself or for the other aspects of your life, if that's a loan or a savings product, there's not really anything that's targeted at you and the fact that you probably have family in another country, if not another continent, right? And so I think a lot of it came out of this frustration that in my industry, we were always building this kind of one size fits all, as if everybody is the same and that we're all, white British people who have lived in this country for generations, and we've got our, chocolate Labrador and we go for our long walks on the weekend. And that's fine, of course, if you do, but actually there are so many of us for whom, you know, Sunday lunch is not a roast at the pub, but maybe it's, jerk chicken after church, right? Maybe it's a curry after going to temple or going to mosque or whatever. And so I think I've always just inherently known that we are here, that we are underserved, and that we need to be doing better.
Okay. What I'm going to say is anybody who wants to download the app that we're going to be talking about shortly, just in the IG, we got you set up already. Just message Pardna, Pardna, and you will get the link to download the app, and you can have a look at what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be covering. I just want to make sure I get that out early. I know people are WhatsApping me at the moment and asking questions, so it's good.
Amazing.
It's good. Right. So you recognize that we weren't being served, and you recognize that there was a gap, I
Mhm.
suppose, in the understanding that it's not a one size fits all. We all have unique needs and requirements, and
Mhm.
also in this market, especially around that kind of time, you're talking, well, um, I suppose we're getting now into the mid to late 2000s, right? So,
Mhm.
um, Obama's administrations happened already, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Starling Bank and so on. So at this point now, you recognize that there is a need for us to be serviced. And what was the primary I suppose instigator, the key thing for you to go, you know what? Actually, nah, come on, I've got to do something about this.
Yeah, that's a really good question because it speaks to both what happened that made me believe and have the conviction to leave my job to build this company, um, but also what was the problem that I was so obsessed with, I think. And so a number of things happened, right? I think a big part of it actually was the pandemic. For many of us, it was life altering.
Mm,
Um, if you weren't affected, Godspeed to you, because I don't know many people for whom their life was not altered during that time.
mm,
I think what became very clear to me during the pandemic, I did a bit of volunteer work during that time, tried to do what I could, right? I would drop food parcels off. I volunteered at a food bank and would, drop parcels off because we couldn't have people coming together.
mm,
I volunteered at the Nightingale Hospital. I mean, my gosh, what a blast from the past.
mm,
If anyone remembers that, the entire Excel Center was turned into a makeshift hospital, and I would go and volunteer there. And one of the things that I very starkly remember was going about, and because I was volunteering, I had, I could be out, and everyone that I would see out was people from our communities, and they were people who were frontline workers.
right.
Yeah. So I'm talking about TFL, right? Or transport folks. I'm talking about people working in sanitation. I'm talking about people working in hospitality who were trying to figure out ways to, get food out to people and that sort of thing. And of course, the nurses, the carers, the doctors who really put their lives really on the front line for us.
Hmm.
And I think I realized that we were out there. Do you remember we would go out there and we'd clap? We'd
Yeah.
clap for the NHS, and I just thought, my God, we're clapping for these people who are literally risking their lives to make sure that the rest of society carries on, while many people are in their, air conditioned apartments behind their laptops, including me, by the way, right? Doing their little laptop work and not having to work very hard, actually. Why is it that we thought that it was appropriate or fair to reward people with just claps?
Mm,
And incidentally, there's almost a perfect circle if you compare our communities and immigrant communities and the frontline workers, the most important people, in my opinion, in our society, in our economy. It's almost a perfect circle. It overlaps, doesn't it?
hmm.
We are always the ones doing the service work. We're always the ones that are going in and caring for others. We're always the ones that are cleaning up after others. And so I think that was a tipping point for me, where I remember going to a few other startups in this fintech financial technology space and saying, hey, I think there's something here. I really like to explore it. Let's see if there's something to be built where we can better serve diaspora communities. There has to be a better way for us to approach this. Why is everything about sending money away? Why aren't we talking about building wealth where we are within our communities in a way that is culturally relevant to us? Right.
Right.
And so that was the tipping point. And also the realization that for me personally, I have built many financial products now that are regulated by the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, by our regulator. And I realized that actually this is probably the perfect storm for me to put my skills to use and actually do something that benefits all of us. Right. So that was probably the tipping point for me, if I'm honest.
Okay, no, that's fantastic. So you I like that. I like it. I like it a lot. As in, you saw we're there doing the work. You saw that it just the story keeps on cycling around, right? The story keeps
Mm.
on going around and around, and unless somebody does something, which is a lot what we stand for as well, we
Yeah.
just got to be the change. You
Yeah.
know, sometimes it sucks. You got to do it by yourself, but you just got to be the change. You gotta make something different happen.
Yeah.
So you saw this. I don't. It doesn't sound like you saw it as an opportunity per se, but you saw it as. Did you see like as a duty to use your skills to help your community?
I think that's a really good way to put it. I've it's interesting because I mean, you and I we could discuss this for ages and ages, right? I think sometimes people see an opportunity to make money, to exploit. Um, there are many people, and we know this for a fact, that would love to come in and, you know, charge our communities, especially like Black communities, more for a service, right? Because they can. And I think many people would have seen this as an opportunity to get rich quick or whatever. But I think for me, especially because it's so personal to me, because I grew up with immigrant parents, I know what it's like to have that cookie tin. I know what it's like to send money home. I know what it's like, you know, when my parents would bundle me and my brother up and to go every few years when we could afford it to go see my grandparents. And the way that we think about wealth and community is so different. I just felt like if I have the skills and I can pull this thing off, if I can build something here, then I have to. There's no other choice, right? And I could continue working at Klarna. I could go work for a bank or whatever. I guarantee you, I'd probably be earning a lot more money than I do right now. But this is just something that is so important to me, and it's. I want our communities to thrive. I want our communities to be rich, to be thriving in this country because we deserve to.
Absolutely, earned it.
Absolutely. We built this I mean, not me personally, obviously I'm American, but, you know, think
But then
about
contributed to building America as well. It's the Western world, right? So it's
well, yeah, but, like, think about the Windrush generation. We just celebrated 75 years, right?
Mhm.
Think about the folks coming over from various Caribbean islands, but definitely Jamaica, right? Who came and literally like they put the team on their back. You know what I mean? Like they're the reason literally that London moves forward. To this day, there are so many Jamaican folks working for TFL, right? Or think about all of the Bangladeshi or Indian immigrants that came and moved up to the north to Bradford or Manchester and worked in the mills and helped, you know, in that revolution, you know, post-war and helping rebuild Britain after that. We like our communities have built this country back up. So do they not deserve to also build their own wealth in this day and age? Is something that is just it's perplexing to me that anyone would think otherwise,
Yeah,
frankly.
no, and that's very true. So we take a step forward, right?
Yes.
And you come up with the concept of in line with helping our communities build wealth.
Yes.
Right. Right. So rather than and that's not taken away from the fact that sometimes we do need to send money back home because we have to do things back home as well.
Of
But
course.
in in line with keeping that wealth and in line with building that wealth here, you came up with the idea of software. When I do the research, it says it's an app, it's software, etc.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
you came up with the concept of a very old school thing for us in Jamaica, which is partner, and it's called
Yes.
various things across the world. But
Mhm.
you came up with a revolutionary, I think, concept of kind of digitizing it
Yeah.
or making or creating an app where people can still have the principles of partner and but have it online, and it's regulated, etc., etc., etc. So
Yes.
I don't want to do the talking about it. I want
Yeah.
you to tell people about what it is.
Well, let's just backtrack for a second, right? Like
Mhm.
I would say that nothing that I'm doing is revolutionary. I have my team, I should say, our team at Bloom have digitized and formalized this age-old practice. And I think it's worth even backing up a little bit
Go
before
on,
we even dive into
feel
that.
free.
Because I know that many of your community, and specifically I'm talking about rum and base, right,
Hmm.
are gonna be from various Caribbean islands, maybe like Jamaica mostly. So of course we'll know this as partner. We might know it as partner scheme. I've heard box money, I've heard table money. There's so many different names for it, right?
Hmm.
And I'm just going to debunk a few things first because sometimes I have people say to me like, "Oh, you've stolen the idea of partner and that's ours." But what people don't realize oftentimes is that we are all doing this. It's a very I use the term global south, and what I mean by that is largely like, well, literally those of us in the southern hemisphere, whether that's uh, Latin America or South America rather, the Caribbean islands. If we talk about the African continent, we talk about the Middle East, Asia. That's what I mean when I say global south. And what's very interesting about the concept of partner is actually I came across this through my grandparents. So I mentioned that I'm half Indian and I'm half Taiwanese. And in India, we call this chit funds or kitties. This is like what we call partner. And in Taiwan and China, where we speak Chinese, we call it hui or he hui. And so I grew up knowing these two things and thinking it was an Asian thing. Actually, I was like, oh, okay, it must be Asian because I'm two types of Asian. So this must be just an Asian thing. And when I moved to the UK, I was working at the US Embassy, and there was a lovely British Jamaican guy there, Gus, who I was explaining to him like, oh, I've gotta go and contribute my hand, right, effectively. And he went, hand, we do this too in Jamaica. We call it partner. And I was like, oh, okay. Is it kind of like a group of people come together, you put a set amount in, and then every month or cycle, someone gets the lump sum? He's like, yeah, exactly. And it rotates until everyone's had a chance. And I went, oh, wow, okay. So y'all are doing that too in Jamaica. Great.
Hmm.
And then I spoke to my other friend who's Pakistani. She's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. We call it committee. Okay, interesting. Then I met a Somali gal. She's like, yeah, yeah, the Somalis are doing, we call it hegbad or ayuto, depending on where in Somalia. Then my Nigerian friends pipe up and they're going, yeah, 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 we do this too. We call it ajo. So if you're Yoruba, you would know it as ajo. But if you are Igbo, you would know it as isusu. And the more and more people I spoke to, I mean, we're talking South Africa, it's called Stokvel. In Congo, it's called Likilimba. In Mexico, it's called Tanda. In Brazil, it's called Consortium. Literally, we are all doing the same thing. And isn't that very interesting? In
Yeah,
our cultures where community and your social group is so, so key and so important, we have all somehow over centuries come to the same exact behavior and we all have a different name for it, but we're all doing the same thing. So that's the first thing. And then what I kept finding when I was doing a lot of early research building Bloom was we're all doing this still, oftentimes in cash and with pen and paper, right? And I used to joke like I love a notebook personally, so I write stuff down. But there are aunties out there who will guard the partner notebook with their life, won't they?
yeah,
Like they are keeping track of who has paid in, who's had their payout, and all of that. And you're having to go get cash out. You're having to put your kid on the bus on a Saturday to go drop off your hands, at the partner auntie. And this is something that I kept hearing in every community over and over and over, which started to confuse me because I thought, okay, well, at the time it was like 2019, 2020. I went, it's 2020. And we've all got, all these great apps now. We definitely have PayPal. We have easy bank payments. Why hasn't anyone digitized this yet? And so the more I thought about it, the more I thought, actually, wouldn't it be nice if there was a way for us to do your partner in your pocket, right? You can create your own group with the group that you trust, your friends, your tribe, whatever. Or you can join people from the Bloom community, and you can set the parameters, right? If you want each hand or each contribution to be 50 quid, great. If you want it to be 200, great. You all agree on that. You join in, you allow the people in, you approve them. And then let's use this existing technology of, we have debit cards. Great. Let's just attach your debit card and give us your bank details. And we can make it super easy that you don't even have to think about dropping off your hand, right? And that's just something that also kept resonating with me when I spoke to people. We have a lot of customers who are nurses actually at Bloom, or carers. And the fact of the matter is, all of us are living very fast paced, busy lives. Some of us are working one, two, three jobs, right? And we are just trying to find a way to save money, to build the financial future that we want. And actually, to have to go and take cash out, to go drop it off, is actually taking up more time that we could be better spent spending time with our family, or taking on an extra shift, or whatever it may be, right? And so it just seemed like a no-brainer to just bring this age-old tradition that we have coincidentally all congregated to across the global south. Let's just bring it into the 21st century. And so that's where the starting point was. And we call it Bloom Circles at Bloom Money, because all of us have different names for it, as I've already kind of demonstrated. There's so many different names for it in every different culture. So we decided, you know what? It's a circle, it rotates. Let's call it Bloom Circles. And so that is what the Bloom app allows you to do.
Fantastic. And what happens if somebody defaults on their payment? So I'm going to ask you the technical stuff as well, so that people,
No, this is really good to go over, because it actually operates the exact same way that partner works in real life, right? So in a regular partner, in a private one, actually even not a private one, if in any partner, if someone doesn't pay in, you're letting the whole team down, aren't you?
Yeah.
And someone's going to get less of a payout, which is why we have these two options. We have the public circle, where you can join with a bunch of strangers. You are comforted, I suppose, by the fact that everyone, when you join Bloom, you do have to go through like an ID verification. We do a quick check and make sure you are who you say you are. You do that cute little selfie, take a picture of your ID, all that stuff. So we're vetting everyone to make sure that you are who you say you are, that you're not, a financial criminal or anything like that. And only after that are you allowed to join the platform and transact with other people. There's that public option where you can kind of take a risk and say, I'm going to join this circle, this partner with a bunch of people, strangers that I don't know. And those tend to be the higher value circles, because typically, if you have a financial goal that not everyone in your social circle can meet, you might join a public one where people are putting more in, right, in their hand. The best option, if you're really wary about it, is to start your own, right, with the people you trust. So with a private circle where you can go knock on their door, you're going to see them at church on Sunday, whatever, and you can say, just as you would in a regular partner, or WhatsApp them, hey, where's the money gone, right? So right now, Bloom does not insure anything. So if you don't pay in, you've let the team down. And it's really interesting, though, because we don't have missed payments. People are very beholden to each other. And I think that's something really interesting, where our communities know that, Sarah, if you are saving up to go on a trip home to see your family, I'm not going to stiff you the money purposely, right? Because I know that it's important for you to go home and see your family. If you know that I really need to put some money into my business, my small but growing business, you're not going to stiff me for that either. And so it's been really interesting to see, as our company grows, because we are still quite young, that people do pay in. And whether that's a private circle or a public circle, And really interestingly, we now even have people, bringing their friends into public circles where they were originally maybe planning to just join themselves, and they'll go, "Hey, actually, like, we've got similar financial goals. Let's use this to save up for a holiday, and we'll go on a holiday together, buy those plane tickets together." They'll grab a friend's arm and say, "Come join me into the public circle." We even have folks like, actually, we have one private circle right now. I don't think they mind me saying, uh, they have 3 generations in one circle. So they've got
And
grandma,
that's, yeah,
mother, and daughter in one circle, and it just warms my heart because that's the whole point, right? We're passing on tradition. Our grandparents did this, our great-grandparents did this back home, and now we can modernize it and make sure that everyone can use it, and benefit from it.
fantastic. One of the questions that just been asked is the government keeping an eye on people's savings?
That's a very good question. So, actually, we treat all of your income as post-tax income, right? We are not liable to report to HMRC. We're not your employer. So, we trust you to report your taxes. That's on you. And you do you. But anything that comes through the door at Bloom is something that we have treated as post-tax income. Playing devil is that the question that we just
That's
got?
the
To the
question.
government or system? Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is, if you were to then put it into an actual savings account after you receive the money, right? Because currently, when you get your lump sum, it goes straight into your bank account, right? If you then move that money into a savings account and it starts to grow and accrue, that's on you to report that to HMRC, but that's not on us anymore. In the future, we hope to have like a savings pot where you can tip all of your, your hand out into a savings pot, but for now we don't, and so everything is treated post-tax.
Okay, so it's people you're hearing, it's on you as normal, because ultimately with everything, the buck stops with you as far as your tax and your tax reporting and your tax situation is concerned. So
Yep.
that's a great question. Thank you so much. I've got another one here. How private is it to save if you're in receipt of benefits that are means tested?
So we're not going to be the ones that report you to anyone. I think that's the first thing. I know that sometimes with benefits, and I've done some work with various councils. Sometimes they will ask you to kind of do a printout or bring a bank statement, and sometimes that can be a bit tough because then they'll go, "Oh well, like, you have savings now, and that's going to affect what benefits you get," right? So we just show up as Bloom Money on your line item, um, and honestly, it's an interesting one, right? Because I personally feel that we should be encouraging people to save.
Mhm.
But I will say that it just shows up as Blue Money on the line item. So if you have a bank transaction or your statement, it will just say Blue Money. That is up to you. And I don't know enough to actually say what that conversation would look like with your council advisor or
Okay.
whoever that you're speaking to. I know it does differ from, borough to borough, council to council. Um, but maybe one you might want to ask about first. I will just say it shows up as Bloom Money only on the line item.
Fantastic answer. So you get to the point where people, obviously, as you just mentioned, you've got generations of people now utilizing the service, and it also sounds as though you keep an eye on things. So you're not just the CEO and you just said, "Oh well, I'm leaving that to the staff to kind of manage it." You still,
No.
it sounds like it's very close to your heart.
It is. Oh my gosh, Sarah, honestly, people ask me when I sleep and I couldn't tell you. Honestly, if you've many times if you're going through customer support, we have a WhatsApp channel as well because we want to make it super easy for people to reach us if they need help. You can literally WhatsApp us and that will get a customer support ticket. Oftentimes it's me responding to
Wow.
customer support tickets. So I have a different, your friendly customer support gal. Um, this is really, really close to my heart because we've talked about this, and I feel sometimes like I'm just banging this drum and no one is listening, and I feel like everyone's sick of me saying it, but the truth of the matter is the financial system was not built for us, for people that look like us, for people that uh, have different faiths, for people from different backgrounds, for people who have lives that straddle continents, countries, right? And it really is my big bugbear that it's deeply unfair. NatWest actually did a really interesting report where I'm going to get the numbers slightly off, but it was definitely more than 3 times. They found in their research that Black African and Black Caribbean communities are over 3 times more likely to be wrongly denied a loan, right? 3 times more likely. And the Runnymede Trust, which does a lot of research on race in 2020, so this was before the pandemic, they did a really interesting piece of work called the Color of Money report. And they found that the average Black African, Black Caribbean, Pakistani, Bangladeshi family has 10 times less wealth than the average white British family. And that's not an accident, is it?
No, not at all.
It's not. And so it's things like this that again, I talk about, our communities rebuilt this country. Our communities contribute so much every day to this country. Why is it that there are not products and services such that we can build wealth so that our communities can thrive? So it's very deeply personal for me. I think people are sick of me banging on about it.
I don't think you see. Here's the thing, right? And one of my great friends who's very much into automation,
Mm,
loves automation, right? All about automation. We always have this back and forth, and we have loads of back and forths
mm,
throughout the day, really, in this. And I feel like I bang on so much about this because the community. I'm so passionate about the community and the
mm,
and the mobilization of the
mm,
community, right? And not feeling as though we are any more kind of a few steps behind because the whole system
mm.
is designed in a way. It was just designed without us in mind, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know whose fault. Well, we're not going to sit down here and blame them and push it around. We just realized that we weren't really included in the decision making when it came to building the system. However,
Yeah.
somebody's got to make a change, and we don't want to go around that cycle because we actually already touched on this. But it's just great that people are making a change. So,
Did you know, just a quick
go ahead.
fact, by the way, it's not just in financial services, it's also insurance, right? If you drive a car,
I was about to get
uh,
there.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to steal the question out of your mouth,
No,
but
man, you go ahead. You go ahead because I got the questions on the hub. You got the learning hub, and we got to teach people some things.
exactly. So, I mean, one of the things that it was really actually shameful, it came out. So, I think it was Citizens Advice found um, there was already a premium on insurance, so car insurance specifically, right? So, if you drive a car out there, on average, we take all populations, whatever. If you're Black African or Black Caribbean in this country, you are probably paying at least a £200 premium per year on your car insurance to anyone else. And that might be simply because of your address. It might be because of your name. There's many reasons behind that. And what's worse is it was already that bad a few years ago. That premium has increased this year. They did some additional research and gathered and found out that it's even worse. And so, what we're trying to do here at Bloom is recognize that if the cards are stacked against us, what can we do to change the game entirely? Right? We're not
Right?
playing your game anymore. And if
No,
if we can take, yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, please.
no. You go. You go. You go. I was gonna say something, but
Well, I just think that, if we can rely on ourselves as a starting point, to bring our own own traditions and formalize them is something we've been doing for generations. It's actually really interesting when I talk to my white British friends, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Like the concept of Pardna is so confusing. I don't know if anyone's tried to like introduce this to any of like their white British friends or anyone that's not familiar with it. And they're like, why would you do that? I don't understand. And yet we all still do it, right? Because there's a reason, there's an accountability to it. There's that access to a lump sum up front without having to go get a loan out, right? There's a great way to actually build up a lump sum if that's something that you're trying to reach a financial goal for. And so, as I say, I've gotten all riled up now. I'm like forgetting my train of thought.
Go on.
We're trying to change the game altogether, right?
So when you talk about that, you have a learning hub on
Yes.
your website, and what
Mhm.
I like about the learning hub is you have a question like, is it haram to invest? And you
Mhm.
talk about mortgage, you talk about what it's like to get citizenship in the UK and how that
Mhm.
impacts your financial standing, etc. I'm assuming, maybe wrongly, but I think I'm correct. These are real life questions that you were asked, and you felt as though it's necessary to actually put that in that hub. So when you just mentioned not playing the game, part of not playing the game is educating people.
100%. 100%. And I
You know,
think this is the this is the really interesting thing. We're not stupid.
at all.
I don't think I need to repeat that, but just in case, we are not stupid. We sometimes lack information though, right? We don't know what we don't know, and that's
Mm,
not our fault. If you've come from a background where, you've never thought about a pension, let alone like, a savings account or an investment account, of course you're gonna not gonna know how to open up a trust, right? Why would you? Because you don't even know that such a thing perhaps exists, or maybe it's a nebulous idea that you've heard about in a TV show or a movie or in a book or something. But
mhm,
it doesn't mean that you can't understand it. And actually, I'm a firm believer that knowledge is power.
absolutely.
And the more we can educate ourselves in plain language. This is the other thing for me as someone that's worked in financial services for so long, for gosh, over a decade now, is we are the only industry where we make our customers learn our language.
Mm,
So we're talking to you about APRs and this and this and that, and all of and management fees and all these things. Can we not just speak in plain English? You know? And can someone just explain to us in plain English what does it mean if I do this? What is the tax implication if I do this? What would it mean for me to open up a pension pot as a SIP, right? Or should I be putting money into my pension or whatever? And these are questions that we do get asked, and we love when people ping us with more, slide into our DMs, ask us the questions that you have. Because, as I say, knowledge is power. And in a way, knowledge itself is wealth because then you can start to teach the next generation, right? I
mhm.
saw there's actually a really great game. Oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now. I'm going to get really upset about this. But he created a game called 5 Minute Partner. I think his
Okay.
name is Jeremy. And it's a game. And so he basically wanted to teach the younger generation how Partner works. And I
Right.
love that because now we can actually start teaching these good financial habits to our little ones, the next generation, to other people within our community, such that if I'm not trying to gatekeep, right? And so much of the financial system is about actually you're worse off if you don't know, right?
Yeah,
If you don't.
I think when we talk about that, it's so key when you spoke about plain English, right? Because the
Mhm.
FCA, the regulator, says
Yep.
that everything should be plain English,
Yep.
and it just isn't. We know that, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
yes, English words that are used, but the understanding differs sometimes.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
and I remember now. His name's Jeremy. So definitely check out Jeremy. If you just on Instagram, they're 5 Minute Partner. It's a game, so you can get if you have little ones or you just want to try it out. Like the whole idea is to teach the little ones how Partner works, and obviously It's specifically called Pardno because I believe Jeremy is actually Jamaican, but
Right.
it
Remember his
is
surname?
for every community, right?
Can you remember his surname? Jeremy.
Jeremy, I think it's Salmon, like Salmon, but I don't know if you pronounce it salmon.
Yeah, no. I mean, you didn't pronounce it salmon, which being American, I kind of half expected, to be honest.
Called out. I've been called out.
Nah. So, what are some of the bad habits that you've seen or you've recognized in not only your time over here, but generally as far as the community is concerned? With, I think spending something that we have bad spending habits as a people. But what some of the
I
things
think
you recognize?
it's the same thing. So I don't want to, because clearly I am not Black and I don't want to pretend that I am. I think that would be very disingenuous and dishonest to do so. What I hear from my Black girlfriends, whether that is like my Nigerian girlfriends or my Jamaican girlfriends or whomever, we seem to have similar uh, habits also in South Asian communities.
And can I ask a question? It wasn't specifically about Black people. It was just generally that you've seen
Yes,
abroad.
no, absolutely. I think what is really dangerous right now is we live in a very instant gratification world, don't we? Um, you see it, you like it, you want it now, right? And I think many of us conflate the brands, the logos as having made it.
Mm.
And don't get me wrong, I like nice things as much as the next person, of course, but oftentimes that short-term gratification of buying, I don't know, a Gucci belt. I'm not saying that that's frivolous or anything, but like, is that what you want, or is that what you feel you have to have because everyone else is doing it too? Right? Is that, do you even want that belt? Do you even need a belt in the first place? Right? And I think we kind of idolize this outward projection of wealth, and like we're very visual in that way, I think, in many communities. I think also, like, not to get too deep about it, but I remember uh what's her name, Candice, um I always mispronounce her surname, Candice Brathwaite, and she is British Jamaican, and she was saying, I heard her speak once, and she said that she remembers her grandfather came over to the UK and he would dress up in a three-piece suit every day, right? Because it was a time where literally on shop fronts it said, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, right?
Mm.
And that was, you knew that if you dressed the part and you looked smart, then you were able to get a job, you were able to get the foot in the door. And so there's kind of I would almost say like this link where some of us think if we can outwardly project this wealth and have these logos or whatever, or simply just because everyone on social media on your Instagram is living that soft life or seems to be, you feel like
Yeah.
you got to keep up with it. I think the truth of the matter is most of us aren't talking about the fact that many of the people who are buying these things, that new handbag, those new shoes, are in a lot of debt for
Mhm.
having done that, right? And so I think we oftentimes prioritize that over the longer term view. I think also I'm a big fan of tell my girlfriends, pay yourself first, right? And so what I mean by that is, if you're a freelancer, make sure that you pay yourself first, and make sure that you're covering your costs, right? If you freelance or contract or whatever, um, pay yourself first. I also mean, like, if you're working and you have a pension, if you can put a little bit into your pension, pay yourself first, right? Put that money aside. And similarly with Pardna, pay yourself first, put that money into Pardna and plan ahead,
Mm.
because otherwise that money gets spent elsewhere, right? It doesn't get spent necessarily on you. And oftentimes we start to negotiate with ourselves and compromise and maybe so and so back home needs a little bit extra cash, and so we end up sending more or whatever, and that's fine. But if you've paid yourself first, at least that you're looking out for you as well. So that's something I definitely would like to see more of. What else? I mean, here's one that's, again, maybe I'm trying to be too deep about it, too profound.
No such thing.
I would love to see us support each other's businesses more.
Mm.
I
You said
think it's,
so you said this on your. Sorry to cut you, but we're having a
yeah,
convo. This is how convos go. Welcome
yeah,
to the world, especially Jamaican
yeah.
conversations, right?
I love it. No, I love
Um,
it.
you said so on. I really love this about your personal IG, where you said
Yeah.
it's literally just me standing on my friends, and effectively supporting your friends and boosting your friends and saying well done. And I
Yeah.
love that because I don't believe we see it enough.
Mhm.
And when people do see it, they take it as it's a bit awkward, right?
Yeah.
And especially in the UK, people don't do it enough. I make it a habit to say to my friends, "Look, I'm very good at also saying when we're not doing as well as we should do.
Mhm.
So I'm very good as well as saying, you know what, well done, absolutely brilliant, love what you're doing." And I think it's important to do that.
No,
You know?
absolutely, and it's interesting as well. Sometimes we can be our worst critics, right? Especially in our own communities. Um, there's a brilliant woman, Tendai Moyo, um, and she is one of the co-founders of Ruka Hair. So they're kind of building they call it the Apple of black hair products.
All right.
And she was saying to me, that's RUKA for anyone in the audience. Highly recommend them. They're brilliant. But she once relayed to me that some of their fiercest critics were Black women. And it really was hurtful for her as a Black woman because here she is trying to go up against the system where we know, especially in this country, a lot of the Black hair products that are out on the high street are owned by South Asians. Right? And here she is, a Black woman trying to build something for Black women, and yet some of her fiercest critics were Black women. And so I think sometimes we just really need to support where we can. Um, if you've done your research and you've vetted the company, the founder, if you think that the values align, like, you know, leaving a review, a positive review after you've had a really nice meal, right? Or what was it? Like I went with a friend recently to Cool Breeze. Does anyone live in Lewisham? Cool Breeze, highly recommend. And I left a review, and a positive review, because I want other people to see that review, and I want, to stand them up. And I think that we need to do more of that, whether it's in with, our own closed communities or more broadly just between all of us, because there is a certain amount of it's easier to divide and conquer, right?
Yeah. So speaking of that, when you talk about doing your due diligence,
Yeah.
um, obviously your product is, you talk about partner, and we've
Yep.
spoken extensively about partner. We've spoken extensively, and probably because you're speaking to me about the Jamaican Caribbean kind of way of doing
Yeah.
things. I'm sure over the time you have received certain challenges because you're not Caribbean, right?
Oh yeah.
So, um, and also, I know we had a conversation not too long ago where you were speaking about, going out and looking for, maybe I'm using the wrong terminology here, but investment in
Hmm.
relation to growing the company.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that. I want to talk about all things. We've got people that own their own businesses that are listening,
Yeah.
etc. And people that just don't know how to move forward. They've reached a point where they're
Mhm.
like, all right, then cool. What do I do next?
Yeah.
And so people are looking for. I've got a colleague of mine that's looking for sponsors and this, that, and the other. So what I wanted to do is try and encapsulate all of that in the question that I'm going to ask you now, which I'm
Mhm.
going to ask you to elaborate on. Is you get to a point, you spend all of your money in your business, right?
Yeah.
I've done it. I know you must have. You must have, right?
Hmm. Oh
So
yes, blood, sweat, and tears as well.
yeah, absolutely. And so you now still realize that there's growing to do, there's more technology that you need to invest in, etc., etc.,
Mm.
etc. What are the steps that you now are taking to help your business move. You don't have to go to specifics, but sort of broad scope things that you're doing to take
Yeah.
Bloom Money, your business, to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first place we started this conversation with me talking about the problem that I found myself obsessed with.
Mhm,
And similarly, you saw a gap where people weren't being served, and that's why you founded Rum and Base, right? You
mhm,
saw the gap there. You thought, I'm going to be the one to step up and fill that gap. That's fantastic. And I think I love entrepreneurs because if you have your own business, by the way, you are an entrepreneur
absolutely.
who are bold and care deeply about their customer. I think so often we're very obsessed with getting the next new customer, which is important, don't get me wrong. But actually, the people who are often the most valuable to your business are going to be your ride or dies. That like first day OG who has been with you since the beginning, who's going to give you the real feedback and say, actually, I really love this, but can we do in-person events, Sarah? Right. And you just had that really great event that you hosted for Carnival. For us, it's when people ask, okay, Nina, this is great that I can do my partner digitally now. I now want to be able to have an option to put it into a savings account or to grow my money, right? And so we get that often. And so now we're thinking ahead, like, okay, what does that mean for the business? What are the resources that I need? Am I going to have
Mhm,
to hire? Sorry, not fire. Am I going to have to hire anyone to do that? What is it going to cost me to do that? Probably. How many people are going to want it? And at what point will I need to hire more people to meet that demand, et cetera, et cetera? I think a lot of times people find it really daunting to, a business plan sounds really scary. Going to the bank and asking for a loan and having this, laminated business plan as we used to do back in the day with all your financials and all your, turnover and everything can be really, really daunting. But I challenge the entrepreneurs and the audience to think about it more simply. Think about it just with that one person as just a starting point with that example, right? This person has asked me for a new product. They've asked me for a new event. They've asked me for something because they are lacking blank. They're lacking connection. They're lacking community. For us, they're lacking knowledge of where to grow their money. Fine. Okay. The next step, what would a solution for that one person look like? Okay. From that point on, but like really break it down to that individual level. And it doesn't have to be a creative exercise or imaginative exercise, although it can be. It can literally be you speaking to your mate who has been with you since day one and saying, actually, yes, um, I love, I don't know, I love that you're doing this particular type of food. Can you also do it to go now? Okay, great. This person has said they want it to go. How many people now? The next step, how many people do I think would be interested in that? Cool. Why don't I start putting feelers out and asking people? Maybe I'd jump into the WhatsApp group. Hey guys, if I started doing stuff for takeaway or like, dinner prep meals or whatever, would you be interested? Yes. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Now you have an idea of how many people are interested. Great. What does that mean for me now? I'm going to have to get more inventory. Step by step. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be glossy and, look like you're going on Dragon's Den. It doesn't have to, you know? And actually, the truth of the matter of they often say the banks love to say this. The UK is a country of shopkeepers. Yes, we are actually. This country is made up of small businesses. And that's fantastic. And they don't all need to be these glossy, massive businesses. They don't all need to be on Dragon's Den. And actually, there is so much, in my opinion, dignity and honor and actually being a business owner and potentially hiring people. If you're hiring someone, you are contributing to someone's livelihood, right? How beautiful is that?
mhm.
If you're serving your community in some way, like what's more respectful and dignified to do in life than that? So take it step by step, and that's really how I've been thinking about Bloom. Is when people come to us, we have people asking us about, would you ever offer us loans? I've got my citizenship coming up, and I know it's going to cost me a pretty penny. So, have you ever considered offering loans? Now, for us, because we're a regulated company, we're under supervision of the FCA. What that means is a lot of lot of resource and a lot of more licenses and that sort of thing. But just as running a restaurant and suddenly doing to go or takeaway, you just plan ahead one step at a time. So that's the way that I've been approaching it. And then you can formulate that into a plan that you can present to the bank, that you can present to potential investors, that you can present to a crowdfunding campaign, right? There's so many options in this day and age. And so I think we just get a bit put off by the idea that it has to be perfect and done in this glossy way, when really it's just pick up the phone and chat to your first customer, chat to your mate.
Fantastic. That's a great piece of advice. So people, pick up the phone and chat to your mate. Because typically
Yeah.
though, I know definitely for
Mm.
us, some of the first people, some of our ride or dies have become mates over the years. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
there are people I chat to on a regular basis, and it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, they regularly come to our events or whatever, and they're the first people I speak to
Yeah.
when it comes to feedback. And it's
Yes.
the first people I say, look, was that cool? Was that not? What should I do? What should I change?
And I'll
And
tell you the truth.
yeah, 100%. But what they do now for me as well is they'll go around talking to people that are there at events or whatever and get feedback and feed that back to me and say, yeah, I was chatting to, and I, because I trust that. I trust
Mm.
the information I'm receiving back from those people,
Yeah.
and they know they know it's something that I take seriously as well. So certainly what you say about being completely obsessed with
Yeah.
A, your client, and B, the service that you're providing, because we're all in this stage of being service providers, right? We all provide something to the greater public, and our duty, because it's great that we certainly are, we have a duty, to our community, and we're doing that. We're enhancing all of it, and we're enriching people. I think it's a fantastic
Yes.
thing. So I want to big you up for that as well.
Thank you.
I know we've been on the line for a little while. Once again, people, comment partner, PARDNA, if you want to download the app. This is Nina Mohanty, CEO and founder of Bloom Money. And we've just been, spent a good time talking about the modern day partners. I said in the mail out
Yeah.
today. And I think it's just some great work, and it's some fantastic work. I believe financial literacy is something that's impacting the whole of the UK anyway, but
Mhm.
certainly our communities.
Yeah.
So it's important that we understand, because things are changing, and we're moving more and more to a cash-free society. And in that, we still need some things that are a little bit familiar, that we know about. And
A
so
little
you're
bit like home, a little taste of home, eh? Yeah,
little taste of home. So thank you so much for your time, Nina. I know you said you wolfed down some food earlier. I hope you kind of get a chance to let that settle, and get the rest of the evening off or whatever from work.
thank
Maybe.
thank you. No, this has been an absolute joy, and, if folks have any questions, like, slide into our DMs. We're at bloommoney_co.co. Yeah, come visit us on our socials, or check out our website, bloommoney.co. And more likely than not, I will be the one answering your questions. So, if you download the app, I will also say that we are a fairly young company, right? And while we are under regulatory supervision, we're a startup, and so we're always looking for feedback. So, if you try it, something doesn't work, it's not quite how you like it, if you want it to improve in some way, please, please, please reach out. Um, we want it to be the best possible thing. And while we're a very small team, we're 7 people actually.
That's great.
Um, Tiny, tiny team. Everything is built here in the UK. Everything is designed and everything, and written by humans in the UK. Um, we do appreciate feedback, and if you enjoy it and you like it, share it with your friends. It helps us massively. And thank you
Brilliant.
so much for inviting me today. It's been
No
a long
problem.
time in the making, huh?
It's definitely been a long time in the making, but I want to actually try and make this semi-regular thing, because we want to find out how well you're doing, you know, in the future, maybe
Yes.
whatever, and just keep this going, because I really, really fundamentally believe in having financial conversations. And I know it's the boring stuff. It's not sexy.
It's not, but money have to make, no?
Money have to make. And that's what we should call our podcast. You know,
There you go.
money have to make.
Brilliant.
So yeah, thank you so much. And
My
we have
pleasure.
some comments. People said it's a great convo, which I do believe as well. It's been a fantastic convo. And
Yeah.
we shall chat again soon, Nina.
Sounds good. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Brilliant, Nina.